I'm going to go ahead and begin by reading the bios of my compatriots up here because the bios in our order of service were edited to fit in there. Dora's bio, familiar to many members of U2C3 due to her friendship and past history with us. Dora Wilburn is a lifelong reader and Corpus Christi resident who is in 3 reading groups, 4, including the one she started that focuses on reading books by Latina authors. Con mi Corazón meets every last Monday of the month at 5:30 p.m. at the Corpus Christi Public Library's McDonald branch, the one that I still think of as Greenwood. A local business owner, Dora also volunteers her time servicing little free libraries, including the one she asked her husband to build outside their house. Additionally, she volunteers her time on the CCPL Library Board, which she has been a part of for over 5 years. Becky Moeller, service and sacrifice. Our labor is both. Becky Moeller, who worked her way up from communication worker to labor union leader, has been a lifelong lover of libraries. She has often gotten her whole generation of family, children and grandchildren cards, including a picture she showed me of a very young one already. Her experience is, she's spoken with us previously about spiritual principles that link the sweat on our brows to how we serve others and make sacrifices that benefit not only our families, but the whole community of which we are a part. I don't know that y'all want mine. It's kind of long. Oh, okay. So I just took this from the last time I did a sermon. So born and raised in Corpus Christi. I have a BA and MBA from the University of North Texas and an MLS, a Master's in Library Science from Texas Women's University, where I worked in admissions for many years. I am currently the Outreach and Programming Librarian at Del Mar College. In 2015, I discovered UU principles in Victoria, Texas, of all things. And you know, I left that out in my last sermon that when I talked about the first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of all, I left out that it was a Catholic priest, I was raised Catholic, who got me to try that church. Much to the horror of my dad, you know, he was hoping he'd bring me back into the fold, and he said, oh no, I knew within minute, Father Gabe said, I knew within minutes of meeting your daughter that wasn't happening, but Father Gabe did Mass on Saturdays at a hospital in Victoria, so he was freed up to go to the UU church in Victoria on Sunday mornings, which unfortunately has not made it. They have closed. I moved to Corpus in 2017, or came back here, returning to my roots, embracing the U2C3 congregation here, where I actually struggled a bit because we were lay-led in Victoria, and I came here when we had a minister. And I'm today, according to this, I'm a vibrant member serving on the Board of Trustees, and I lend my voice to the choir, volunteer in AV services rather poorly, collaborate with the worship team, and play a key role in fostering community growth. All right, so now let's get to the reason we're here. So the format is going to be, I'm going to start off with some words, I'm going to turn it over to Dora and then Becky, and then I'm going to say some follow-up words depending, I'm definitely going to speak more, just it's going to depend on what timing we have for how much I have. I will admit, I'm a little nervous. The one time I did a sermon that wasn't planned, there wasn't time to get worked up. So it seems like each time I've gotten more worked up, but in particular the nervousness for this, I think, comes from the fact that it is a hot topic. I am a librarian, and people might think that an academic librarian, so there's 4 types of librarianship. There's school, K through 12, public, and there's academic, colleges and universities, and then there's another type called special libraries. And special libraries can actually double. For example, when I was a public librarian at Victoria, Texas Public Library, I also was the point of contact for genealogy. That's an example of a special library, or a law library at a law firm or at a university. So my first professional librarian role was in Victoria at the public library, and it was an eye-opening experience in so many ways. I don't want to get too much into it except to say that just like there are 4 types of libraries, there are 2 types of library work. There's front services, like circulation, sometimes called access services, information or reference services, And then there's back-end work, the people who order items, who catalog items, who process items, who do all sorts of stuff. And I made a transition where I was a library staff member at Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado, to a public librarian and at a public library. So I went from an academic university to a public library, and it was way too much of a transition because I was in a public role, and here I thought I was kind of a middle of the road in Boulder, Colorado, but then I moved to Victoria, Texas, and all of a sudden I was a bleeding heart liberal. So it was an interesting experience. So the UU Church really saved me. So I just want to share that public library work is so incredibly important. I started off not very good at it, and I got really good at it, I think. It took a lot of work. And I left it knowing I would never go back to it, and that was before the current book banning stuff. Like, I knew when I left there was nothing that would make me go back to it because it was that hard. It was such good, important work, but it was so hard. My work now is hard too, but it's just public libraries is a special kind of work. And we did so much stuff. I helped teach computer classes. Can you picture these people in Victoria who maybe someone who had never in their life had to apply for a job because they were working in these, fracking was so big then when I moved there in 2015, and they had never had to have a job, but then all of a sudden everything dries up and they have never worked since now you apply online. So there were resume classes that we offered. There were classes on how to learn to type and how to use not WordPerfect, sorry. I still love WordPerfect more than Microsoft Word. MS products. There were also Microsoft products. There were all sorts of classes we did, and that didn't count my hours on the information desk. That's what we called it there instead of reference, which they've since gotten rid of, which is wild to me. Because we were very busy depending on the time of day. And it wasn't just reader's advisory. Hey, I'd like to find another book. A man that came in one time and said, I feel like I've read every mystery. Can you point me? I love that kind of stuff. Or help me find this book or DVD. A lot of times it was, I need help with this computer thing. I need help getting my Kindle to work. I got a Kindle for Christmas. How do I work it? Or a Nook. So all sorts of things. It was great. I had to walk around the library when I was the librarian on charge in an evening shift. Weekend, we took turns doing Saturdays. There were people who you had to be careful. They had a dog in there, but you can't just have dogs in there. Oh, we had a problem with fleas. It's crazy. And then on top of all this, I'm ordering things. Not just when someone comes to me, I want that next book. I want that next movie in the series or book in the series. Order that. Put me on hold. But, sometimes I had to also keep up with the trends. I was in charge of ordering for most of the adult fiction, and I was assigned a significant amount of nonfiction to order items for. And that also did not count the electronic resources I ordered for. And it was very good work, but very fulfilling. And that was one of the areas I struggled with at first. So I made it my goal to be told to stop ordering. I never got to that goal, but I got up high, which was good. So picture me walking around and seeing people, kids eating with Cheetos and eating Cheetos, and I don't want them touching the books with Cheeto fingers, or there's all sorts of things you have to do. There's the SIPA, Child Internet Privacy Act or something, maybe, there's all sorts of things you have to think about. So libraries have policies and procedures, and they range from anything from collection development, child safety, because people would drop off their kids in the summer, and you don't want that. So we had policies that if they were 12 or older, I think it was 12, they could be without an adult supervised. I mean, we weren't saying to not be there. Hopefully the adult was there somewhere else in the library, but if they were younger, then and they were on their own, we had to proceed. There are all sorts of stuff that you deal with in a public library, and it's very important work. I really, to this day, feel that way. So we had a patron behavior policy. I went online. We also have something called collection development policy. All libraries have it, and it is a It is a policy that says this is what we order and how we order. And remember I mentioned that to y'all that it turned out I was a bleeding heart liberal. Well, I still had to buy things that our patrons wanted to read. That included things that I don't personally agree with, but I look at what they want. I look at trying to have a depth of a breadth of items for multiple people in the library. That is what libraries do. So the only other thing I want to share with that is we also regularly deselect or weed items from libraries for various reasons. That's actually part of the collection development policy. So it'll say, basically we'll remove things because they're old or they're not circulating, or there's just all sorts of reasons. Sometimes we just need to order a new copy. So when I was a public librarian, I still remember the first time I got a request for reevaluation of materials. That's a form that it's very common for libraries to have as part of the collection development policy, especially at a public library. And it was for 2 DVDs, not 2 books. And I asked my supervisor, what do I do? And she said, you follow our policy. So I got to watch 2 DVDs at work in my cubicle on my laptop. I kind of fast forwarded it. But the person's complaint was, this movie is too risque. And this movie, she didn't appreciate that they died by suicide. And it was based on a true story, some monk, so my ultimate decision, the movie was labeled rated R. So my ultimate decision was not to remove either, and my boss backed me up. So those kinds of things happen, and I think it only happened one other time for me in the 2.5 years I was there. But if you may have heard, Victoria Public Library has gotten, like many public libraries, a lot more stress. So speaking of, I'm going to turn it over now to Dora, so y'all get a break from me and my nerves.
Okay, thank you. Okay, y'all. I don't do this very often, but here I am. So I'm going to talk to, well, like she said, this is my 5th year in the library board. And at the library board, it's just a volunteer, it's a volunteer job. And my friend, Julie Rogers, who was supposed to give the talk today, asked me to speak to y'all because she knew that I loved books. Okay, and so so she also asked me, she's the one that suggested that I join the library board. And it's very easy to join any board here in town. You just volunteer, you call, and you either email them or call your councilman and ask them that you're interested in joining. And so I did that, and at that time, I'm in District 2, and at that time, Ben Molina was my councilman, and he said, sure, I'll nominate you, and so I was in it. And so I asked him, so what am I supposed to do now? What's my duties? And he said the only thing that, the duties of anybody in the library board is to inform the city or our citizens what the library has to offer. So I thought, oh, that's easy. I'm good at that, at telling people stuff. So I have my own business, so I do Facebook and Instagram, and I have over 3,000 followers. So I thought, I'm going to post it all the time. Share it, share it, share. So I do that. So, and then what happened after that, on December the 12th, and the reason I remember that is because that's our Dia de la Guadalupe, okay? So that's a big deal for me. So on December the 12th, the ladies, new board members, and I'm going to name them. Their names are Pat Craig, Carrie Moore, Joan Carol Ocarillo, Melinda de los Santos, and Dolores Raban. They're all in Moms for Liberty. Okay, so they joined us. So there's 9 library boards, library members, so now they became the majority. So there's 5 of them now. And there's 4 of just us who I thought we were just supposed to tell the people what the library's doing. So, and then all of a sudden, they decided to start a group within a group. So, and this group was supposed to see, well, first of all, when that happened, it's very unusual not to get reappointed. So we were wondering what happened, because usually it's like no big deal. But this happened, so it's okay. These people, it's about what do you call it? Like freedom of speech. So they want to join and they got it, but something happened. So before this all happened, we were also given a workshop on how to object. If somebody asked us, how do you object to a book? And there is, like she said, there's a procedure. And the people that are in charge of whether the book is going to be able to stay or move or whatever are the librarians, which are paid, and the director, which is Laura Garza. So the new board, like I said, decided to start a group within a group so they can censor what we can read. They feel anything that has to do with sex, queerness, and books of color should not be in the library or be put in a certain area. So, and what I like to say is I feel that they want to take away our freedom and rights to choose. They keep insisting they are doing it for our children. We all know this is wrong. So I'm asking for anyone who believes or is against censorship to come to our meeting, and it's every first Tuesday at 10:30, and express yourself, like Becky's there, and others who love and respect the library and the librarians. This is happening all over the country. So these women, that's what they do. They mention like other states, like so-and-so, Arkansas is doing it, or Florida's doing it, or and this is what but I keep saying, well, this is Texas. We're not there, it's not happening. And so I just think that we can't let it happen here. And so we all have to speak up. Before, the other years, we never had public speaking. We had one lady come, and her name was Dora, like me, an older lady. That's why I remember her. And she just wanted our books that you check to see what the library is doing, bigger letters, because she was an older woman and she couldn't see it. So that's it. So now we have large print, yes. So now we have like, I'm going to say maybe 40 to 30 people coming and objecting, far right, the gay community, anybody that's concerned and expressing themselves, because, we all feel this is wrong, and that's what they're doing. They're doing it in the name of God, or they're doing it in the name of children, because they're using that a lot. The kids, we're taking care of the kids, or the kids this, the kids that. And also what's happening is the city manager's assistant now comes, and now everybody comes. We have all the librarians sitting in the back, in support of, this is their job. They've been doing a great job. If you don't want to check out a book, don't do it. But it's like, like the children's book says, you have to, everybody's different. And we've gotten so many stories of young adults, that, they couldn't tell their parents certain things, so they couldn't ask questions. And, the book helped them. It helped them. They went to the library and they checked it out, and they felt, they weren't alone. And I've heard, so many sad stories, and of course happy stories that, they didn't feel like, they felt like there was somebody that they belong with, whatever. So, so to me, it's very important. So if you all have, time, and it's very important for us to speak up. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Becky. I know.
My name is Becky Moeller, and I'm just a community activist in town. I'm retired from the Texas AFL-CIO. But now I don't worry about labor stuff as much as I worry about community things. I have testified before the Library Advisory Board 2 or 3 times, so if you've been there, I'm going to repeat one little story. There is 2 gentlemen that are there all the time. I see them at the library when I go to check out books. And they think that if you read a book on that's about gay people, you're going to turn to one. You're going to be gay if you read that book. It's going to change your life. Well, if that were true, I would be an opium addict, because I loved every book ever written by Pearl Buck. Many of you probably read those. And I started reading them about probably the 5th grade. And my parents did say, "Why are you reading this?" Well, I liked the first one, so I kept reading. I liked the the stories about, I didn't like them, but I learned from the stories about how the Chinese were treated when they were brought over here to build the railroad and had opium dens and that sort of thing. So the book didn't change me. I've never tried opium. But it did educate me on how immigrants are really treated from back in the 1800s till today. But it did not make me an opium addict, did not make me a Chinese or a railroad worker. But as an adult patriot of the library, patron of the library, I'm just convinced that we need to be able to read anything we want to read. And it's not up to you to say, no, Becky, you cannot read any more Pearl books because it's made you an activist. Well, that's a badge of honor, but it did not make me anything illegal or whatever. My sister and I, my baby sister and I, we lived in Big Spring at the time, my first library card. During the summer, once a week, different times because, you know, I'm almost 76 now. But back then, we would walk to the library with our red wagon. Each of us would check out 6 books, and we would read 12 books that week. I'd read her 6, and she would read my 6. But my parents looked in the wagon. They looked at what we were checking out, and that was their job. It wasn't your job to check my wagon. It wasn't the library's job to check my wagon. It was my parents' job to check that wagon. Amen. And tell me what I was going to be reading. And they did that. I can't remember, but a time or two they said, no, why don't y'all just put this in the bottom of the wagon till next week and take it back. So, but today I'm addressing a different topic, and Dora touched on it. This subcommittee that they've come up with. At the last library board I went to, and I didn't make the last meeting, Dora, I'm sorry I wasn't there, but the one before that, I did talk about public business should be conducted in the public. So there are 9 board members, as she mentioned. She was appointed by a city council prior to this last one, but she is appointed and sitting there as an appointee of your city council. Yet she cannot go to the subcommittee meeting because that business is conducted in private. So my testimony that day, along with another gentleman, disagreed that that's a violation of the Texas Open Meetings Act. I thought it was as well, and that was my testimony that day. I still think that today. I did go to a former city attorney, who's a friend of ours, and said, hey, when you were city attorney, did they have subcommittees, and was it able for them to meet in secret and do public business in secret? And he said, no, and I can tell you where to go, but I'm going to have to look it up because I've been retired a few years. And it is, and I brought copies if y'all want some of these when we get through, I'll be in the lobby. City ordinance that was in effect still July 15th when I copied this, and I have 25 copies if y'all want one. It's 10.2.4, compliance with Texas Open Meetings Act. And it says, no closed meeting may be conducted except with prior approval of the city attorney. Our current city attorney has not given this approval, but he's going after it. He told 2 of our current city council people that, yeah, he's going to fix that. This has been this way probably in writing for 20 years. It doesn't say what day it was adopted, but when my friend was a city attorney, that's the way it was then. No secret meetings, public business was conducted in public. I'm a committed mom, a grandma, and now great-grandmother, and I think that we need to hold on to these principles because the Library Advisory Board is very important. Board members from all backgrounds are very important. But you know what? This could go further. They could say, if you're gay, we're going to make this secret meeting in the Parks and Rec. If you're gay, you cannot go to a city park. Right. If you're having a birthday party and you're a Muslim, no, you can't do that birthday party. I don't even know if they have birthdays, birthday celebrations, but you can't use a park for that because you're Muslim or whatever religion that particularly 4 people on a committee might object to. It's a cancer that will spread. We had to fight for the Texas Open Meetings Act. We're going to have to fight the city now for them to conform with Texas law and their own ordinance. Well, you know, when you testify at the city council, they can't answer your question. The city council people can't answer your question there. The mayor did ask the current city attorney, his first name is Miles, I don't know his last name, I call him Jerk. But she asked him, is it true that these subcommittees should be adhering to the Open Meetings Act. And he said, well, there is a quorum rule. That wasn't her question. And he wasn't answering me, he was answering the mayor. He answered her with an answer that didn't apply to her question. So that's what really got my radar going, that he's going to try to change this. And he now has stated to 2 city council people that I've talked to directly that he's going to try to change this where they can do public business in secret. So I urge you to contact your city council members, even if you don't think it's important that the library board not do it. It will go further. It'll be the planning association, it'll be the parks, it'll be a police advisory board even perhaps. Who knows how far it could go? Their own city ordinance says no, but they're doing it. They've had 2 meetings, and they had no report at the last city advisory meeting that I went to. So we don't know what they're doing. And I want to know, because you know what? My taxes are paid just like the Moms for Liberty, I hope, pay their taxes. Thank you very much for your time today.
All right.
For folks online, my dad just said that Becky was the president of AFL-CIO. Did I get that? CIO, sorry. And that's a local chapter, right? Oh, Texas, whoa. I think I missed the sermon you did, Becky. I think I was out of town. Okay, let me look at our time. Oh, you guys okay with us going a little bit over just so I can give you all a few of the facts a few of the things I have to share? Okay, all right. So I do want to get to the UU stuff, but I'll move that to the end. I just want to point out a few things. We do all know about the increased cases, and we'll get back to that, book challenges and banning challenges, asking for it banning, actually removing the item or trying to move it. But I do want to point out that it isn't just on the right. There are well-meaning people on the left or all levels of the spectrum who want items removed for whatever reason. A lot of times it's an offensive word in a book. And very good examples are Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn, Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. I want to tell y'all something about To Kill a Mockingbird for a moment. I went on quite a rabbit hole because I learned so much about the fact that there is a different experience for white kids growing up reading that book in school than it is African American students. It's not the way the book is and the discussions, it apparently is not. It's just mind-blowing how much info I learned about that. I encourage you to look at that if you're interested, because it does seem that it's actually more harmful to read that book in schools for at least some African Americans. I don't know, I really went on a rabbit hole last night reading about it. It was fascinating. And then now back to the coordinated attack from the right. I wanted to share real quick. There's always been book bannings in our country since or challenges and bannings from its instigation. But the issue is this increase, right? So we've got PEN America is a great website to go to kind of keep track of what's going on. Like you can see that what started it in Texas, Representative Krause, it's got the list of all the books, and it's crazy because it'll have like the first book of a set, it'll have, but not the third or whatever in the series, it'll have the second one, but not the, I mean, it's just crazy. It was not, it's just insane if you just read the detailed article on that. And then I got more recent numbers from July 2021 to June 2023, cumulative data summary. Key takeaways I just wanted to share. The past 2 school years have demonstrated a mounting crisis of book bans. From July 2021 to June 2023, PEN America's Index of School Book Bans recorded 5,894 instances of book bans across 41 states and 247 public school districts. Copycat bans, one of the ladies mentioned something that made me think of that. Copycat bans have emerged as a key component for the book ban movement. So that's where something is banned in this school district, so let's try to ban it in this school, or this public library and that public library. A lot of times, it is a well-meaning parent, But there's actually a lot of coordinated efforts. And remember I talked to you all about the form where they get a lot of people, maybe they're not even in that district or state, and they're all inundating a library with the form, the request for reconsideration forms. And they are trying to get books removed in school libraries that they don't even have kids or grandkids at. Okay, one of the, actually, that's a good point. The request for consideration form actually says, and there may be some that don't say it, but you need to read the book in its entirety before you're questioning it. Back to the well-meaning parent thing. And it was already touched upon. A parent has every right to say what their kid can and cannot read, but they have no right to say that about someone else's kids, right? I think we all intrinsically know that. I want to share, I'm kind of skipping around so that I can get, I want to share one thing about that. If you are trying to be well-meaning and protect your child, it's still your right to do that, but I think you're actually setting your child up for failure to get along in the world, right? Like, but I don't know. That's still, I don't have the right to tell that parent how to parent, especially in my case. I don't have kids unless you count the furry kind. And it's so important for us to, I'll go back to that point if I have time. Okay, so state libraries, other things that are going on. State libraries are withdrawing from the American Library Association and criminalizing of librarians in some states, or that's kind of legislation that's trying to happen, and it's a little scary. Academic libraries aren't, you know, maybe we don't get quite the brunt, but you've heard of DEI and how the state of Texas got rid of that, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So there are concerns. Del Mar College didn't put the play on in the fall that they were going to put on because they were scared to do it. They wanted to find out if they could do it. Maybe scared isn't the right word. And they ended up doing it in the spring because it's apparently the most banned musical. Putnam County Spelling Bee, one of the most banned musicals. It's really funny. So the, another rabbit hole I wanted to share for those of you who like to do research. It's not necessarily, academic librarian. It's not necessarily that concerning that some libraries, state libraries have disassociated from ALA. I mean, yes, it is in this political environment, but I wanted to share with y'all, that was another rabbit hole I found, that actually, before the advent, and this I got from a Substack, HX Library Substack, before the advent of the civil rights movement, challenging segregation simply did not appear to be top of mind for American librarians. For example, the members of ALA's Work with Negroes Roundtable was more focused on determining the extent to which Negroes enjoyed access to library services, not questioning the fairness of segregation. But later in that, when a new form of activist librarianship began emerging in the 1960s, it grew out of frustrations precisely like this one. Here, it is often charged it's the fundamental weakness of an ethic of neutrality. And I feel like that's what I want us to come away with, because I'm going to tell us a few things we can do. First, I want to help you have a little bit of info in case someone says, well, movies are rated. Why can't books be rated? Okay, I'm going to give you a few things. First of all, they're already rated, okay? Librarians do, when I was a public librarian, and actually as an academic librarian, I just use different resources, we do research on materials. So, for example, School Library Journal might have a review of a book that will start with GR 8 up, grade 8 and up. Or Book List might end a review with the same book with grades 8 through 11. And it's often taught to us. I remember when I took collection development in my library science program, it was taught to me that when I had to do a project, we had to pick a couple, we had to justify our example purchase. That ended up being a fun project. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, even though I said let's be careful about an ethic of neutrality, another reason for not rating on book, not specifically trying to do something like that. That's private organizations doing that, right? We're First Amendment, you can't do that. Libraries should remain viewpoint neutral. This is from the ALA. Providing information that patrons seek about any rating system equitably regardless of the group's viewpoint. So it goes on to talk about cataloging decisions, labels, or ratings. But let's think about the public library. So access to material, okay, so there is a cataloging decisions, labels, or ratings applied in an attempt to restrict or discourage access to materials or to suggest moral or doctrinal endorsement is a violation of the First Amendment and the Library Bill of Rights. Yes, there is a Library Bill of Rights, and the first of the 7 reads, books and other library resources should be provided for the interest, information, and enlightenment of all people of the community the library serves. Materials should not be excluded because of the origin, background, or views of those contributing to their creation. So an example of viewpoint neutral directional aid is a label that gives information while not persuading a patron to a particular point of view. An example of a viewpoint neutral directional aid could be a genre label such as romance, science fiction, historical fiction, and mystery. A prejudicial label would be a label that tries to persuade or establish an institutional preference for something. An example of this would be the genre label of Christian fiction with a cross at the symbol, which would indicate a preference for Christianity over other religions. Now, what the ALA recommends, because that's a violation of the separation of church and state and is prohibited by the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, as well as the Library Bill of Rights, they recommend the practice of labeling, in that case, inspirational fiction. But do we see this at the public libraries? Not here in Texas, anyway. Not at VPL or Corpus.
I just read, I got a notice in social media that in Granbury, Texas, the constables are opening investigations into librarians. Yes, so it's gotten beyond.
Yeah, it's really insane. Okay, so one other thing about the why not the rating, stigma. We don't want books even moved in most cases because of the stigma of going to that place. And a lot of times, an author whose book is banned, other works by them are banned, even when that's not flagged in the usual ways. And if you guys think everything is about sex and LGBTQ and people of color, it's actually not just that. There are books that are banned, children's books that are banned because there's potty humor in them. It is really, really interesting, these times we're living in. I want to share, I think a couple weeks ago, we had a Pride, there was a Pride event hosted here. I didn't make it this year, but the previous year I came towards the end, and I got one of every book they had remaining, and eventually I went through, I'm like, which ones am I actually going to read? I gave Roger's daughter, picked out a couple, and anyway, the 3 I picked, I realized later, all had to do with loss and grief, but they all happened to center around one character who was figuring out he was gay, and he also happened to be half black, like his mom was white and his dad was black, and his sister died in a drunk driving car accident. I mean, it gives kids a chance to talk about these issues, and his parents were very religious. Then, another one, a different one that was crazy about superhero, it was a lot of plot points, but a kid into superheroes would have loved that one. That character was figuring out she's bi. I mean, just, okay, that was just a tiny subplot. So all 3 of them, it was so great. I really needed it. And yeah, so how can we, let's go ahead and go, I know y'all are probably tired of this, so let's go ahead and switch over to the last point, which is our UU values. And I don't know if I covered our third spaces enough. I mean, I just want to point out, sometimes people say, oh, libraries aren't relevant, there's lower numbers. Actually, that's not true. We have people that, I suppose it depends on the library, how welcoming people feel, but also you got to think there's more factors at play. Like people might not be physically going, but they might be using the electronic resources, reading books online, listening to audiobooks. So, and And speaking of, the person that was supposed to be here, Julie, asked me to remind y'all to get a library card, renew your library card, and I want y'all to know that I've got one for Nueces County Public Library as well as Corpus Christi Public Library. I have one for the Portland Public Library. Our county can get access to the electronic resources too. And then everyone can get one with Houston Public Library for and Texas permanent residents. And I also folks need libraries more than ever, especially people who don't feel accepted. They don't have, maybe they're in a rural Texas town and they feel like maybe I'm, I don't know if I might be gay and I don't know if anyone will accept it, so there's all sorts of things for that. There could be all of that. And there's.
Also, and you get to renew it. Like you can keep your book for
Oh, yeah.
3 months.
The city makes it so much easier now if you're not aware of that for your books. Unless someone puts it on hold, it just keeps renewing, which is actually a little bad for me. Okay, UU values, I promised y'all that. So principles 3 through 5 are relevant, I think, especially the fourth. So I'm just going to read those real quick. The third principle, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. The fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Fifth, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process in which our congregations in society, within our congregations and in society at large. The Reverend Jana Manchi, born in India, but at Cedar Lane, he's a minister at Cedar Lane UU congregation in Maryland. Here's something he said. For me, the beauty and power of Unitarian Universalism is in its commitment to diversity and pluralism. It teaches us to move beyond tolerance, to be respectful, accepting, and understanding of difference and diversity. It emphasizes that a beloved community is not built through achieving achievement, but through achieving understanding. And he also says, someone else said, it was him. Unitarian Universalism guides people to engage with diversity in history so that all people have the freedom to be their full selves and see each other fully. I think, as much as I want to say more, I don't want us to get out too late. So I did have a quick what you can do, support your library. Already mentioned that. Speak up when you can, do so in a respectful way that feels safe to you. Remember, neutrality doesn't always help, right? And can actually make injustices last longer. We've got so much evidence of that in our country's history. I'm struck by the fact that President Biden did that, 10-minute talk recently from the Oval Office, and he mentioned that America has these ideals that we never live up to, but that doesn't mean that we don't try, that we shouldn't keep trying. And then if one type of reading is restricted, then it's a slippery slope. So just, to remind people, well, you can control your kids' reading, but you can't control my kids' reading or my grandkids or my god kid or whatever, right? No, my cat doesn't read. She likes music though. All right, so.
But others also too, what you can do, I wouldn't do it, but y'all do it, is run for city council. So you have more control, or more power.
You can get involved. What did they say about local politics being where we can really make a difference?
Yeah,